The night sky above Seoul was unusually clear, the stars twinkling like tiny diamonds scattered across a black velvet canvas. The city buzzed with quiet anticipation, though most of its residents had no idea that something extraordinary was about to happen. On the outskirts of the city, in a secure military compound, soldiers stood at attention, their faces tense but resolute. A delegation from an alien species called the Valith had announced their arrival, and Earth wasn't sure what to expect. Jae-min adjusted his tie for the 100th time as he waited outside the main building. He didn't like formal events or high-pressure situations, but this was different. This wasn't just another meeting. It was humanity's first official contact with an advanced extraterrestrial civilization. As the liaison officer assigned to assist the Valith delegation, Jae-min knew the weight of responsibility resting on his shoulders. His superiors trusted him because he was calm under pressure, but tonight, even he felt uneasy. The hum of engines filled the air, growing louder by the second. Everyone turned their heads toward the horizon, where a sleek silver spacecraft descended gracefully, glowing faintly against the dark sky. It looked nothing like the clunky flying saucers depicted in old science fiction movies. This ship was elegant, almost organic in design, as if it had been grown rather than built. When it finally landed, a ramp extended downward, revealing a group of tall, slender figures stepping into the cool night air. At the center of the group stood Yunha, the youngest daughter of the Valith Emperor. She was strikingly beautiful, with pale skin that shimmered faintly under the moonlight and long silvery hair cascading down her back. Her eyes, large and luminous, scanned the humans before her with an expression of mild disdain. She wore a flowing metallic gown that seemed to shift colors depending on how the light hit it. To anyone watching, she appeared regal, confident, and untouchable. As the Valith approached, Jae-min stepped forward to greet them. "Welcome to Earth," he said in a steady voice, bowing slightly. "We're honored to host you." Yunha tilted her head, studying him with curiosity. "You are the human liaison?" she asked, her tone clipped and condescending. Her words were translated instantly through a small device attached to her earpiece, making her sound eerily calm and robotic. "Yes," Jae-min replied. "My name is Jae-min. I will assist you during your stay here." Yunha smirked, glancing around at the assembled humans. "Primitive creatures," she muttered under her breath, though the translator picked it up perfectly. Some of the nearby officers stiffened, but Jae-min remained impassive. He had expected arrogance from the Valith. After all, they came from a civilization far more advanced than Earth's. What he hadn't anticipated was the sheer contempt in Yunha's gaze as she looked at him. "This planet is quaint," Yunha continued, gesturing dismissively at the surrounding buildings. "Your technology is laughable compared to ours. I assume you have no concept of quantum entanglement or zero-point energy." Jae-min nodded politely. "We're still learning, Your Highness, but we've made progress." "Progress?" Yunha scoffed, her lips curling into a sneer. "You call this progress? Your entire infrastructure relies on fossil fuels and fragile electrical grids. If we wished, we could dismantle your society within hours." Her words sent a ripple of unease through the crowd, but Jae-min kept his composure. He had trained for years to handle situations like this, to remain calm when others would panic. Still, there was something unsettling about the way Yunha spoke, like she truly believed every word she said. "I understand your concerns," Jae-min said carefully, "but Earth has much to offer beyond our current level of technology. Perhaps we can learn from each other." Yunha raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Learn from you? What could we possibly gain from primitive beings such as yourselves?" Before Jae-min could respond, one of the Valith advisors stepped forward, placing a hand on Yunha's shoulder. "Princess," he said softly, his voice carrying a note of warning. Remember why we are here." Yuna hesitated, then gave a curt nod. Turning back to Jae-min, she crossed her arms over her chest. "Very well. We will humor you for now, but do not waste our time." With that, she turned on her heel and strode toward the waiting vehicles, her entourage following closely behind. Jae-min watched her go, feeling a strange mix of frustration and determination. He didn't know what game the Valith were playing, but he was certain of one thing: Eunha's arrogance wouldn't last forever. Over the next few days, Jae-min worked tirelessly to ensure the Valith delegation's visit went smoothly. He arranged tours of key facilities, organized meetings with government officials, and coordinated security protocols to prevent any incidents. Despite his efforts, however, Eunha continued to mock and belittle him at every opportunity. During one particularly tense meeting, she openly criticized Earth's reliance on outdated communication systems. "Your satellites are pitiful," she declared, leaning back in her chair with an air of superiority. "They drift aimlessly in orbit, broadcasting weak signals that could be disrupted with minimal effort. How do you even function?" Jae-min clenched his fist beneath the table, but forced himself to smile. "Our systems may not be perfect, but they serve their purpose. And we're constantly improving." "Improving?" Eunha laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "You humans cling to your limitations like children clutching toys. You lack vision, ambition, purpose." Her words stung, not because they were entirely false, but because they struck a nerve. Humanity did have flaws, weaknesses that the Valith had already exploited in subtle ways. Yet Jae-min refused to let Eunha see how much her taunts affected him. Instead, he maintained his neutral expression, silently reminding himself that patience was key. The breaking point came during a private discussion about Earth's defenses. Eunha leaned forward, her piercing eyes locking onto Jae-min's. "Tell me, human," she said, her tone dripping with mockery, "do you honestly believe your pathetic weapons could stand against us? Against beings who have mastered interstellar travel and harnessed the power of stars?" Jae-min met her gaze steadily. "We don't need to fight to prove our worth, Your Highness." "Oh, spare me your platitudes," Eunha snapped. "You're nothing but savages hiding behind illusions of civility. Pathetic." For a moment, Jae-min considered responding, defending humanity's achievements and resilience. But then he realized something important. Arguing with Eunha would only validate her arrogance. So instead, he did something unexpected. He turned and walked away without saying a word. Eunha stared after him, her mouth hanging open in shock. No one had ever dared to ignore her before, let alone walk away mid-conversation. For the first time since arriving on Earth, she felt a flicker of uncertainty. Who was this human, and why didn't he react the way she expected? Little did she know, Jae-min's silence was far more dangerous than any heated argument could have been. And as the days passed, both of them would come to realize just how much was at stake, not just for Earth, but for the fragile balance of power between their two species. The days following Jae-min's silent departure from Eunha's insult stretched into a tense standoff. The Valith delegation continued their scheduled activities, touring Seoul's landmarks and meeting with government officials, but the atmosphere was thick with unspoken hostility. Eunha had expected Jae-min to grovel, or at least attempt to defend himself after her verbal attack. Instead, his refusal to engage left her unsettled, though she would never admit it aloud. For Jae-min, the encounter had been deliberate. He knew that reacting emotionally would only play into Eunha's hands, reinforcing her belief in humanity's inferiority. By walking away, he had turned her own arrogance against her, leaving her uncertain for the first time. But while Jae-min's outward demeanor remained calm, his mind raced with questions. Why were the Valith truly here? What did they want from Earth? And how far was Eunha willing to go to prove her dominance? Unbeknownst to both of them, there was more at stake than just diplomacy. Back at the secure military compound where Jamin worked, whispers of a darker purpose behind the Violet's visit began to surface. Intelligence reports suggested that the aliens weren't merely conducting a routine diplomatic mission. They were gathering data on Earth's resources, infrastructure, and defenses. Some analysts even speculated that the Valeth might be planning an invasion. Using diplomacy as a smokescreen, J-Min wasn't privy to all the classified information, but he had access to enough to piece together the truth. Late at night, when the compound was quiet and the fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, he pored over files and satellite images. The Valeth spacecraft orbiting Earth wasn't just a single ship. It was the tip of a much larger fleet. Their surveillance drones had already mapped out key locations across the globe: power plants, military bases, water reservoirs, and communication hubs. It was clear that the Valeth were preparing for something big, though no one could say exactly what. As Jamin studied the evidence, he couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. If the Valeth decided to act, humanity wouldn't stand a chance without preparation. But how could he expose their plans without triggering a conflict prematurely? The answer eluded him, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. Meanwhile, Yunha found herself growing increasingly frustrated. She had come to Earth expecting to assert her superiority and demonstrate the futility of resistance. Instead, Jamin's stoic behavior threw her off balance. Every time she tried to provoke him, he responded with silence or polite indifference, refusing to give her the reaction she craved. It was maddening that her frustration reached a boiling point during a cultural exchange event hosted by the Korean government. The venue was a grand hall filled with traditional Korean music, art, and cuisine. Humans and Valeth mingled awkwardly, the air thick with tension despite the organizers' best efforts to foster goodwill. Yunha wandered through the crowd, her silver gown shimmering under the soft glow of paper lanterns. Her advisors hovered nearby, whispering reminders to maintain decorum. But Yunha paid them little attention. She spotted Jamin standing near a display of ancient Korean pottery, deep in conversation with one of the local historians. His posture was relaxed, his expression thoughtful. To anyone else, he might have appeared completely at ease. But Yunha noticed the subtle way his eyes scanned the room, taking in every detail. There was something about him, something she couldn't quite put her finger on, that made her uneasy. Determined to break his composure, Yunha approached him with a sly smile. "Enjoying yourself, human?" she asked, her tone laced with mockery. Jamin turned to face her, his expression neutral. "It's an interesting exhibition," he replied simply. "Interesting?" Yunha scoffed. "You humans call this art? These crude shapes and colors are nothing compared to the masterpieces created by my people." Jamin didn't rise to the bait. "Beauty is subjective, Your Highness. What one culture values, another may not." Yunha narrowed her eyes, clearly annoyed by his calm response. "You're impossible," she muttered. Then, seizing a glass of sparkling water from a nearby tray, she accidentally spilled it onto Jamin's suit jacket. The surrounding guests gasped, unsure of how to react. Some chuckled nervously, while others exchanged worried glances. Jamin looked down at the damp stains spreading across his chest, then back up at Yunha. For a moment, their eyes locked, and Yunha braced herself for an angry outburst. Surely, this time, he would lose his temper. But Jamin simply smiled faintly and set his glass down on the nearest table. "Excuse me," he said politely, before turning and walking away without another word. Yunha stared after him, her cheeks flushing with anger and embarrassment. How dare he dismiss her so easily? Who did he think he was, treating her like an insignificant annoyance? The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Yet beneath her fury, a small part of her couldn't help but admire his self-control. No matter what she did, he refused to let her win. Later that night, back at the Valith embassy, a sleek, otherworldly structure erected on the outskirts of Seoul, Yunha vented her frustrations to her chief advisor, Kale. Kale was older than most Valith, his silver hair streaked with faint traces of blue. He had served the royal family for decades and was known for his wisdom and patience. "She's insufferable," Yunha exclaimed, pacing back and forth in her quarters. "This Jaemin, he doesn't react to anything I do. He acts like I'm beneath his notice." Kale listened quietly, his expression unreadable. When Yunha finally paused to catch her breath, he spoke in his measured tone. "Perhaps that is precisely why he unnerves you, princess." "What do you mean?" Yunha demanded, stopping mid-step. "Humans are unpredictable," Kale explained. "They lack our discipline and technological prowess, yes, but they possess qualities we often overlook: adaptability, resilience, and creativity. This Jaemin, he understands that engaging with you directly would only validate your assumptions. By remaining silent, he denies you the satisfaction of seeing him falter." Yunha frowned, considering his words. "You think he's playing a game?" "I think he knows more than he lets on," Kale replied. "Do not underestimate him, princess. Underestimating your opponent is a fatal mistake." Yunha sank into a chair, her irritation giving way to unease. Could Kale be right? Was Jaemin deliberately trying to manipulate her? The thought was unsettling, not because she feared him, but because it challenged everything she believed about humans. They were supposed to be weak, primitive, and easily controlled. Yet Jaemin defied those expectations at every turn. While Yunha wrestled with her doubts, Jaemin received troubling news from his superiors. Satellite imagery confirmed that the Valith fleet had begun deploying additional drones around Earth's atmosphere. These drones were equipped with advanced scanning technology, capable of penetrating even the most fortified human installations. Worse still, intercepted transmissions hinted at a possible ultimatum being prepared by the Valith. Leadership J-Min knew he had to act quickly. If the Valith intended to issue demands, humanity needed to be ready. But exposing their true intentions wouldn't be easy, not without risking open conflict. He decided to dig deeper, using his position as liaison officer to gather more information. Over the next few days, Jaemin subtly probed the Valith delegation, asking seemingly innocent questions about their technology and culture. He also began monitoring their communications more closely, searching for patterns or clues that might reveal their endgame. It was risky work. If the Valith discovered what he was doing, they could cut ties entirely, or worse. Despite the danger, Jaemin felt a flicker of hope. If he could uncover concrete evidence of the Valith's plans, he might be able to rally Earth's leaders and prepare a coordinated response. And perhaps, just perhaps, he could find a way to bridge the gap between their two species before it was too late. As the days passed, Yunha continued to test Jaemin's patience, probing for weaknesses she could exploit. But each time, he met her provocations with the same quiet resolve. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, her perception of him began to shift. He wasn't just a human liaison anymore. He was a puzzle she couldn't solve, a challenge she couldn't ignore. The tension between Jaemin and Yunha reached a boiling point as the days passed. The Valith princess, frustrated by her inability to provoke a reaction from the human liaison, began to question everything she thought she knew about Earth and its inhabitants. Her advisors, sensing her growing unease, urged her to focus on the mission at hand. But Yunha found herself increasingly distracted by Jaemin's quiet defiance. J-Min, meanwhile, was walking a tightrope. He had uncovered enough evidence to confirm his worst fears. The Valith were not here for diplomacy alone. Their fleet in orbit was growing, and their drones were mapping Earth with alarming precision. It was only a matter of time before they made their move. Yet exposing their plans outright could lead to disaster. Humanity wasn't ready for an alien invasion, not yet. Jamin needed more time, and he needed to outsmart the Veleth without tipping his hand. The turning point came during a formal dinner held at the Veleth embassy. The event was designed to showcase interstellar cooperation, but the atmosphere was anything but harmonious. Humans and Veleth sat side by side at long tables, adorned with exotic flowers and glowing crystals. The air buzzed with forced politeness, punctuated by awkward silences and stilted conversations. Jamin sat near the center of the room, flanked by government officials who were eager to impress their alien guests. Yunha presided over the gathering, a silver gown shimmering under the soft light of hovering orbs that served as both illumination and decoration. As the meal progressed, Yunha rose from her seat, her presence commanding immediate attention. She raised a glass, its surface rippling like liquid metal, and addressed the assembled crowd. "Tonight, we celebrate the union of our two great civilizations," she began, her voice smooth and confident. "Though we are vastly different, we share a common goal: progress." Her words were met with polite applause, though Jamin noticed the subtle skepticism in the expressions of some of the human attendees. Yunha continued, her tone shifting slightly as she turned her gaze toward him. "And yet, there are those among you who cling to outdated notions of independence, who believe that your primitive ways are somehow equal to the advancements of the Veleth." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Jamin, who remained seated, his expression unreadable. Yunha's challenge was clear. She wanted him to rise to her bait, to defend humanity in front of everyone. But Jamin didn't take the bait. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms, meeting her gaze with calm indifference. Yunha's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Perhaps one day you will see the truth," she said, raising her glass higher. "To progress and to understanding." The toast ended with scattered applause, but the tension in the room lingered long after the speeches concluded. As the evening wore on, Jamin excused himself early, citing urgent matters that required his attention. In reality, he needed to process what had just happened. Yunha's public provocation was no accident. It was a calculated attempt to undermine his authority and embarrass him. But why now? What was she planning? Back at the military compound, Jamin reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The situation was worsening. The Veleth fleet had expanded significantly, and their surveillance drones were now targeting critical infrastructure worldwide. Power grids, water supplies, communication networks, all were being mapped with surgical precision. It was clear that the aliens were preparing for something big, though the exact nature of their plans remained unclear. As Jamin worked late into the night, his thoughts kept returning to Yunha. There was something about her behavior that didn't add up. Despite her arrogance, she seemed conflicted. Her earlier outburst at the dinner felt less like genuine superiority and more like desperation. Was she trying to prove something to herself or to someone else? The next morning, Jamin received an unexpected summons to the Veleth embassy. When he arrived, he was escorted to a private chamber where Yunha awaited him. She stood by a large window, gazing out at the sprawling cityscape below. For once, her usual confidence was absent, replaced by an uncharacteristic hesitancy. "You wanted to see me?" Jamin asked, breaking the silence. Yunha turned to face him, her luminous eyes searching his face. "Why do you refuse to fight back?" she demanded, her voice tinged with frustration. "Every insult, every provocation, I give you every reason to react, and yet you remain silent. Why?" Jamin regarded her carefully. "Because reacting would only validate your assumptions," he replied evenly. "You expect anger, fear, or submission. I choose none of those." Yunha frowned, pacing slowly across the room. But why? Do you think your silence makes you strong? Makes you better than me? It's not about being better, Jamin said. It's about choosing how to respond. You may have superior technology, but strength isn't measured by power alone. It's also about resilience, adaptability, and the ability to find solutions when faced with challenges. Yunha stopped pacing and stared at him, her expression unreadable. For the first time, Jamin saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. You speak as if you know what true strength is, she said quietly. But your people are weak, fragile. How can you claim to understand strength when your entire existence depends on such fragile systems? Strength isn't about perfection, Jamin countered. It's about overcoming imperfections. About learning, growing, and finding ways to thrive despite limitations. That's something your people seem to have forgotten. Yunha opened her mouth to retort, then closed it again, clearly struggling to formulate a response. Finally, she sighed and looked away. You confuse me, she admitted. I don't understand you or your kind. You're supposed to be beneath us, yet you act as if you're equals. We're not beneath you, Jamin said firmly. We're simply different. And maybe that's what scares you. Yunha bristled at his words, but before she could respond, the door slid open and Kale entered the room. The elder advisor bowed slightly to Yunha, then turned to Jamin. Forgive the interruption, he said, his tone courteous but firm. But there is urgent business that requires the princess's attention. Yunha nodded curtly and gestured for Jamin to leave. As he exited the chamber, he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had shifted between them. For the first time, Yunha had shown a crack in her armor, a hint of vulnerability beneath her arrogant facade. Over the next few days, Jamin doubled his efforts to gather information about the Vailith's plans. He hacked into their secure communications, piecing together fragments of intercepted messages. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. The Vailith intended to issue an ultimatum to Earth, demanding access to its resources in exchange for protection. If humanity refused, the consequences would be catastrophic. But Jamin also discovered something else, something that gave him hope. Not all of the Vailith supported this aggressive approach. Some, including members of Yunha's inner circle, believed that cooperation with humans could yield greater benefits than domination. If Jamin could exploit this division within the Vailith ranks, he might be able to prevent conflict, or at least buy humanity more time. His opportunity came sooner than expected. During a routine briefing with the Vailith delegation, Jamin deliberately left behind a data tablet containing classified information about Earth's defenses. The files were encrypted, but not impenetrably so. It was a calculated risk. If the Vailith accessed the data, they would gain valuable insights into humanity's capabilities. But if Jamin played his cards right, the leak could serve another purpose entirely. Sure enough, Yunha confronted him the next day. What is this? She demanded, holding up the tablet. Did you leave this for us intentionally? Jamin feigned surprise. That's classified information, he said, his tone sharp. How did you get it? I'm asking the questions here, Yunha snapped. Why would you leave such sensitive data lying around? Are you trying to sabotage your own planet? Jamin allowed himself a small smile. Maybe I am. Or maybe I'm sending a message. Yunha's eyes narrowed. A message? To whom? To anyone willing to listen, Jamin replied. Your people underestimate us, Your Highness. They think we're weak because we lack your technology. But strength isn't always obvious. Sometimes it hides in plain sight. Yunha studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away, the tablet clutched tightly in her hand. That night, Jamin waited anxiously for news. Had his gambit worked? Would the Valith leadership interpret the leaked data as a sign of humanity's resilience or as proof of its vulnerability? The answer came sooner than he expected. Early the next morning, Kale appeared at the military compound, requesting an urgent meeting with Jaemin. When Jaemin arrived, the elder advisor wasted no time getting to the point. "The princess has requested your presence aboard our flagship," Kale said. "She wishes to discuss certain matters." Jaemin's heart raced. This was at the moment of truth. Whatever happened next would determine the fate of humanity. As he followed Kale to the waiting spacecraft, he couldn't help but wonder, had he pushed Yunha too far? Or had he finally reached her? The journey to the Valith flagship was unlike anything Jaemin had ever experienced. The sleek spacecraft hummed softly as it ascended into the sky, leaving Earth's surface far below. Through the transparent walls of the vessel, Jaemin could see the curvature of the planet growing smaller with each passing moment. His stomach churned, not from fear, but from the weight of what lay ahead. He didn't know why Yunha had summoned him, but he suspected it wasn't for a casual chat when they reached the flagship. Jaemin was escorted through corridors that seemed alive, their metallic surfaces rippling faintly as if breathing. The air smelled sterile, yet electric, carrying an almost imperceptible hum that vibrated in his chest. Finally, he was led to a large chamber where Yunha awaited him. She stood at the center of the room, her silver gown flowing around her like liquid starlight. Her advisors were present too, their expressions unreadable as they observed Jaemin's entrance. "Thank you for coming," Yunha said, her tone unusually subdued. There was no mockery in her voice this time, only a strange intensity that made Jaemin uneasy. "You asked me here," Jaemin replied simply. "What do you want?" Yunha hesitated, glancing briefly at her advisors before turning back to him. "I've been thinking about what you said. The idea that strength isn't always obvious, that it hides in plain sight." Jaemin nodded, keeping his expression neutral. And I wanted to test your claim," Yunha continued. She gestured toward a holographic display hovering in the air between them. It showed detailed maps of Earth, marked with glowing points indicating key locations: power plants, military bases, water reservoirs, and communication hubs. "These are the sites our drones have identified as critical to your survival. If we were to disable them, your society would collapse within days." Jaemin's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to remain calm. "That doesn't prove anything. Knowing where our weaknesses are doesn't mean you understand our strengths." Yunha tilted her head, studying him closely. "Then explain it to me. How does a species so fragile survive in such a harsh universe? What makes you think you can stand against us?" Jaemin took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. Survival isn't just about having the best weapons or the most advanced technology. It's about resilience, the ability to adapt, to find solutions when everything seems hopeless. Humans have faced countless challenges throughout history, and every time we've found ways to overcome them. We don't give up. Even when the odds are against us, we keep fighting. For a moment, Unha said nothing, her luminous eyes fixed on his face. Then she turned to her advisors. "Leave us," she commanded. They hesitated, exchanging wary glances, but ultimately obeyed, filing out of the chamber until only Yunha and Jaemin remained. Once they were alone, Yunha stepped closer to him, her expression conflicted. "You confuse me, human," she admitted. "Everything I've been taught tells me that your kind is inferior, weak, primitive, unworthy of respect. But there's something about you, something I can't ignore." Jaemin met her gaze steadily. "Maybe it's because you've never really looked at us. You see what you expect to see, what you've been told to believe. But humans aren't defined by our limitations. We're defined by how we rise above them." Yunha frowned, pacing slowly across the chamber. Rise above them. Is that what you're doing now? Trying to convince me not to destroy your world? I'm trying to show you that destruction isn't the only option, Jamin replied. If you truly believe your people are superior, then act like it. Superior beings don't conquer, they inspire. They lead by example. They build bridges instead of walls. Yunha stopped pacing and stared at him, her frustration evident. You make it sound so simple. But my father, the Emperor, he won't listen to reason. He sees Earth as a resource to be exploited, nothing more. Then maybe it's time someone challenged his perspective, Jamin suggested. You're the princess, aren't you? Don't you have influence over him? Yunha laughed bitterly. Influence? I'm barely more than a figurehead. My opinions mean nothing compared to the will of the council. That's not true, Jamin countered. You have power. You just don't realize it yet. People follow confidence, conviction. If you believe in something strongly enough, others will too. Yunha shook her head, clearly torn. Even if I tried, what difference would it make? The fleet is already preparing to issue an ultimatum. Once that happens, there's no going back. There's always a choice, Jamin insisted. But you have to decide what kind of future you want for yourself, for your people, and for mine. The two of them stood in silence for a long moment, the tension between them palpable. Finally, Unha sighed and turned away, her shoulders slumping slightly. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. Why risk everything to help someone like me? Because I believe in second chances, Jamin replied. And because I think you're capable of more than you realize. Yunha didn't respond immediately. Instead, she walked over to the holographic display and studied the glowing map of Earth. After a while, she spoke again, her voice softer this time. If I help you, if I try to stop this, it could mean exile. Or worse. It's a risk, Jamin acknowledged. But sometimes, taking a risk is the only way to create change. Yunha turned back to him, her expression resolute. Very well. I'll do what I can. But I need your help. Together, we'll expose the truth about my people's plans to both Earth and the Veleth fleet. Jamin nodded, a flicker of hope igniting within him. We'll need to move quickly. Once the ultimatum is issued, it'll be too late. Over the next several hours, Jamin and Nunha worked tirelessly to devise a plan. Using the data Jamin had leaked earlier, they identified key vulnerabilities in the Veleth fleet's communication network. By hacking into these systems, they could broadcast a message directly to the ships orbiting Earth and to Yunha's father, the Emperor. The process was fraught with danger. Every step carried the risk of detection, and if they were caught, the consequences would be dire. But neither of them hesitated. For Jamin, it was a chance to protect humanity. For Yunha, it was an opportunity to prove that she was more than just a spoiled princess playing at diplomacy as dawn broke over Earth. The final pieces of their plan fell into place. Yunha activated the transmission, her hands trembling slightly as she input the commands. Moments later, the holographic display flickered to life, showing live footage of the Veleth flagship's bridge. The Emperor appeared on screen, his regal presence commanding immediate attention. Father, Yunha began, her voice steady despite the knot of fear in her stomach. I must speak with you. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Unha, what is the meaning of this interruption? I've uncovered evidence of the Council's true intentions, Yunha explained. They plan to exploit Earth's resources under the guise of diplomacy. This mission was never about cooperation. It was about conquest. The Emperor's expression darkened. You dare accuse the Council of deceit? Have you forgotten your place? No, Father, Yunha replied. I haven't forgotten. But I refuse to stand by while innocent lives are destroyed. Humanity may be different from us, but they deserve a chance to prove themselves. to show that coexistence is possible. For a moment, the emperor said nothing, his gaze piercing. Then he turned to one of his advisors, who whispered urgently in his ear. When the emperor spoke again, his tone was cold. "Your naivety astounds me, daughter. If you truly believe this, then perhaps you are unfit to inherit the throne." Yunha flinched but held her ground. "If believing in peace makes me unfit, then so be it. I'd rather lose the crown than betray my conscience." The emperor's lips curled into a sneer. "Very well. Consider yourself stripped of your title. From this moment forward, you are no longer a member of the royal family." Before Yunha could respond, the transmission cut off, leaving the chamber eerily silent. Jaemin stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing," he said softly. Yunha nodded, though tears glistened in her eyes. "Now what?" "Now we wait," Jaemin replied. "The message has been sent. It's up to the Valith fleet and Earth to decide what comes next." As the hours passed, news of Yunha's actions spread rapidly. Some among the Valith leadership condemned her betrayal, while others began questioning the morality of their mission. On Earth, governments scrambled to prepare for the worst, but also to consider the possibility of peace. Though the outcome remained uncertain, one thing was clear. Yunha's decision had changed everything. And whether humanity and the Valith could find common ground would depend on the choices they made moving forward. The days following Yunha's bold transmission were tense and uncertain. The message she had sent to the Valith fleet, and inadvertently to Earth's leaders, had sparked a firestorm of debate on both sides. Humanity was divided, with some calling for immediate retaliation against the Valith and others urging patience to see how the situation unfolded. Among the Valith, the reaction was equally mixed. Some factions supported Yunha's stance, arguing that coexistence with humans could bring unforeseen benefits, while others condemned her actions as treasonous and demanded swift punishment. For Jaemin and Yunha, the aftermath was a whirlwind of uncertainty. They remained aboard the Valith flagship, their fates hanging in the balance. The emperor had cut off all communication with his daughter, leaving her isolated from her people. Yet, despite the weight of exile, Yunha felt an unfamiliar sense of clarity. For the first time in her life, she had acted according to her own beliefs, rather than bending to the will of others. Jaemin stayed by her side throughout it all, offering quiet support when words failed. He knew the risks they had taken, but he also believed that Yunha's courage might pave the way for peace, or at least a chance at understanding between their two species on Earth. The governments of the world convened an emergency summit to discuss the Valith ultimatum. Representatives from every nation gathered in a high-security facility, where satellite feeds displayed live images of the alien fleet orbiting the planet. The mood was grim. Many feared the worst. But amidst the fear, there was also resolve. Humanity wasn't ready to surrender. Not yet. It was during this summit that Jaemin addressed the assembled leaders. Standing before a podium, he spoke not as a diplomat or soldier, but as a human being. His voice was steady, his words simple yet powerful. "We stand at a crossroads," he began. "The Valith have shown us their power, but they've also revealed something else: doubt. Their princess risked everything to expose their true intentions, because she saw value in our survival. We must honor her choice by proving that we are worth saving." He paused, letting his words sink in. The Valith believe they are superior, but superiority isn't measured by weapons or technology. It's measured by how we treat those who are different from us. If we can show them that we're capable of growth, of cooperation, then maybe, just maybe, we can avoid conflict. The room erupted into murmurs of agreement and dissent, but Jaemin pressed on. "We don't need to fight to prove our worth. Instead, let's offer them a challenge. Work with us." Learn from us. Together, we can achieve far more than either of us could alone." When he finished speaking, the room fell silent. Then, slowly, one leader after another rose to applaud. It wasn't unanimous approval, but it was enough to shift the tide. A decision was made. Earth would respond to the Valeth ultimatum not with defiance, but with diplomacy. They would propose a partnership, a shared future built on mutual respect and collaboration. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship, Unha watched as her people grappled with the implications of her actions. Some ships within the fleet began breaking formation, their captains unwilling to follow through with the invasion plans without clear orders from the Emperor. Others continued to monitor Earth, waiting for further instruction. The division within the Valeth ranks grew deeper, threatening to fracture their unity. Unha knew she couldn't stay idle. She approached Jamin one evening, her expression determined. "We need to do more," she said. "If we wait for my father to make the next move, it may be too late. What do you suggest?" Jamin asked. "We broadcast another message," Unha replied. "Not just to the fleet, but to everyone, to the Valeth Council, to Earth, to anyone listening. I'll explain why I did what I did and why I believe coexistence is possible." Jamin nodded, understanding the gravity of her proposal. "It's risky. If the Council sees this as rebellion, they won't hesitate to act against you." "I know," Unha said firmly. "But if I don't try, then what's the point? What kind of future am I fighting for if I'm too afraid to speak up?" With Jamin's help, Unha prepared her address. This time, the message was broader, aimed at bridging the gap between humans and Valeth. She spoke candidly about her doubts, her fears, and her hopes for a better tomorrow. She acknowledged the mistakes of her people and urged them to reconsider their approach. And most importantly, she called on both species to embrace the unknown, to take a leap of faith toward peace. When the broadcast ended, the response was overwhelming. Across Earth, people watched in awe as an alien princess stood up for humanity. On the Valeth ships, soldiers and civilians alike debated her words, questioning long-held beliefs about their superiority. Even the Emperor, cloistered in his chambers, could no longer ignore the growing unrest among his people. Finally, after days of silence, the Emperor issued a statement. He announced that the invasion plans were suspended indefinitely and proposed a new round of negotiations with Earth. While he stopped short of endorsing Unha's actions, he acknowledged the validity of her concerns, a rare admission of vulnerability from a ruler known for his iron grip. The news spread like wildfire, igniting celebrations across the globe. Humanity breathed a collective sigh of relief, though no one dared to declare victory just yet. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with challenges and compromises. But for the first time, there was hope. In the weeks that followed, Unha chose to remain on Earth temporarily, serving as a liaison between the two species. Her presence was met with mixed reactions. Some humans viewed her with suspicion, while others welcomed her efforts to mend the rift. Jamin worked closely with her, guiding her through the complexities of human culture and politics. Over time, their partnership evolved into something deeper, a friendship forged in the crucible of crisis. As Unha interacted with ordinary people, she began to see humanity in a new light. She marveled at their creativity, their resilience, their capacity for kindness, even in the face of adversity. Slowly, her initial contempt gave way to admiration. Humans weren't perfect, but neither were the Valeth. Perhaps that was the key to coexistence, recognizing imperfection and striving to overcome it together. One evening, as the sun set over Seoul, Jamin and Unha stood together on a rooftop overlooking the city. The lights below twinkled like stars, a reminder of how far they had come and how much farther they still had to go. "You've changed," Jamin said, breaking the silence. "So have you." Unha replied with a small smile. I came here thinking I knew everything. Now I realize how little I understood. That's progress, Jamin said. Learning never stops for any of us. Yunha nodded, gazing out at the horizon. Do you think we can really make this work? Humans and Velith, living side by side? It won't be easy, Jamin admitted. But if we keep trying, if we keep believing in the possibility, then yes, I think we can. They stood there for a long moment, watching as night descended over the city. The journey ahead would be long and uncertain, but for now, they allowed themselves a moment of quiet triumph. Against all odds, they had taken the first step toward a brighter future, one defined not by fear or arrogance, but by hope and understanding.